Hi, everyone. This is Lori Munyon. Um, I wanted to record a tutorial for you if you decide that you want to try vodcasts for your classroom. I know when I was learning how to do them myself, I had to do a lot of figuring out on my own, and it took some time. So I can say now, if I'm creating a vodcast, it takes me about 30 to 40 minutes overall to create start to finish. That was not so in the beginning, so hopefully this tutorial kind of shortens your learning curve. It takes a little practice like anything else to write a good quiz, to write a good lesson plan, to write a good lab activity. It takes time. So this takes a little time to learn, but once you have it, you can pretty much knock them out. And of course, once you have them for your terms, you get to use them over and over again every time you teach that content. So they don't go away. Okay? All right, so what you'll see is when I'm going to make a vodcast, I start by opening up a PowerPoint, okay? And I go right to the blank slide, all right, no other configuration. They're all blanks, no title page, nothing, they're all blanks. And I open a dozen of them right away, all blanks, okay, and that gets me started. And then I go back to the first slide, and which would be this one here, and I put an image, which is the same image I will use on all of my vodcasts, all right? For a particular class. So I do have two different cue images. If you find my other vodcast from my dissertation study, which is available on YouTube, you'll see that I use two different images. So this is one, and this one was used in one school. The other one was used in a different school for the studies. Okay, my way to tell them apart. Okay, so I have this first slide, and I put an image. You'll see that there's no text on there. There's no I don't know, borders, GIFs, animations, blinking things, you know, all of that, I don't know, bric-a-brac is what my grandma used to call it, right? All around there. Keep it simple and straightforward. And this will be their cue. When they see that, okay, that's their cue to pay attention. We're about to go into some important information, okay? So that's the first slide for this podcast. I'm writing this podcast on Vodcast, that's the term. So we're doing a podcast about Vodcast. What did I do here? Okay, let's go to the next. There we go. There's slide 2. And on slide 2, we have just text. All right, and there would be narration or voice overlay is what we call it. All right, so you have voice overlay and text, and keep it simple. All right, the word is Vodcast. Again, no other decorations on the slide. The third slide adds syllabication, and there's a reason for that. We know kids who mispronounce words are unlikely to spell them correctly. So pronunciation is key to appropriate spelling. So I suspect in your classes you model reading for them, you model pronunciation for them, and that's what this part is here. Okay, so it models the correct pronunciation of the word. Obviously, vodcast is not a particularly challenging word. It has 2 syllables. And you'll see that I say that as I'm doing the voice overlay. So keep it simple and straightforward. Also, a note about the voice. You want to keep your voice friendly. You know, we all have our teacher voice, right? We want to make sure that the teacher voice we're using is the friendly teacher voice. Yeah, so not too professional, not too stern, not austere, just friendly, casual. This should not be an intimidating experience for the listener, okay, or viewer. So yeah, so we have the word and we have the syllabication. And here we are on slide 4 now. And again, text. So we've only had one image, the very first one, the cue. So we're on slide 4 now. And I will admit, typically I would not have this much text on one slide. Of course, I'm assuming you're all professionals here. So I've added a little bit more to that, but it talks about the podcast here. A little extra detail. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. Here's slide 5. Again, all text. And there's a reason for this. We don't want to overburden the working memory, right? We want to reduce the cognitive load, which will increase the likelihood, excuse me, of long-term memory here. All right. So again, we have a little background information. We have a definition, and we use it in context here. Moving on, we have an image. So finally, we get to slide 6, and there's our second image. It was a bit of a problem finding images for vodcasts or even caps for that matter that didn't also include some kind of text in it. So I would relegate this to sight word vocabulary. Obviously, you're all adults and professionals here. You're creating your own here. But if I were using images for students, I would not include any text except for maybe a label. Okay, so you'll see that in some of mine. There might be a label. I really like right here where it has evaluation, IEP, and replacement, but the image is all of it. You'll also notice over here that it's CAP, Content Acquisition Podcast. That's another word for a vodcast. They use them down at Virginia, University of Virginia, and they're well received by their university students there. Dr. Michael Kennedy is the gentleman who I believe started it down there. It was his dissertation study, and is actually the study that I found when preparing for my own dissertation. So this here is based on his original research. Okay, so just an image, no other text, and you would do the voice overlay. So I keep noticing or identifying the fact that I'm using two modalities, all right? And there's a reason for that as well, all right? You can use text and voice overlay, or you can use image and voice overlay. What you don't want to do is have text, image, and voice overlay. So there's some research that tells us, in fact, substantial research that tells us that, especially with those kids who struggle with processing, the brain can do a pretty good job of making sense out of two modalities at once. As soon as you add the third modality, there's an exponential increase in information lost, all right? So we want to stay away from using all three at the same time. That actually is counterproductive, okay? Moving on, there we go. We have some additional information. Here's several examples of podcasts. Again, you'll see just texts. All right. And then we have an image of the vodcast. All right. So there we go. Again, it's difficult to find an image of a vodcast. I selected Bacon Donut because I like the name. Okay, Bacon Donut. However, I don't use their product. I don't go to their website. I found out that it's a gamer's website. I'm not a gamer. I play solitaire on my phone and mahjong, and that's pretty much the extent of my gaming. But what you do see in this picture is that there's an individual there sitting on the sofa and observing the vodcast. That tells us that these can be used in the classroom if that's part of your lesson plan. What's really beautiful is that when you're in the classroom, you are the authority in the classroom, and students can go directly to you and say, I don't understand this word, or what does this mean, or can you pronounce it for me? And then once they leave your classroom, you know, typically they're left to the devices of people who might mispronounce or misunderstand or have a different interpretation of the word, okay? The nice thing about the vodcast is once they leave your classroom, they can, if they go to a resource room, they can have the same authority that they had because you create these. They can take it home and mom and dad can listen and maybe learn some stuff. But also mom and dad's prior knowledge doesn't interfere with their learning of this term here. Additionally, the time on the bus, if they have their phones with them, they can review for a quiz on the way in. So there's a lot of positives associated with the podcast. Okay, moving on. You'll see that we have a non-example, all right? And this is important as well. There are some opportunities for some overlapping in terms of some of the terms we use, particularly with pronunciation. You'll see in one of the example podcast that I posted, it has weight, W-E-I-G-H-T, it's a science term, right, in terms of matter. And then we have wait, like you're waiting in a line, W-A-I-T. You know, for someone who's not familiar with the terms, they sound like the same word. So we wanted to include a non-example. Khan Academy, I like Khan Academy. I've viewed their videos as I was working through some of my graduate work, and I found them helpful, all right? But in terms of constructing knowledge and being cognizant of the universal design for learning and the processes that atypical learners you know, have to work around, Khan Academy, you know, doesn't necessarily follow that. They don't have to. You know, they're good videos. Just in terms of what we construct, we want to make sure that we're, you know, checking off all the boxes. Okay. And then we'll add in a synonym, a word that means about the same thing. We're connecting to prior knowledge. We're expanding their interpretation of the term. All right. Helping them to generalize the term. And then we would insert pictures of the synonym in there. So that helps them with background information. Okay, we would give them an antonym, all right, to clarify the meaning. It's this, not that. And then we want to use the antonym in a sentence, kind of like the one I just gave you in terms of waiting, right? Um, so there we go. And then we finish off the vodcast with the word again, vodcast. So you'll see about 5 images is what you have to find. And I found that to be the most time-consuming aspect of the whole thing. Um, you as the authority in the classroom will know the content you want to deliver as long as you know what goes on the first slide, what goes on the second slide, what goes on the third slide. But the images, you have to weed through a lot of stuff to find just the right image to include there, and that consumes time. The recording piece takes about 2.5 to 3 minutes. It's pretty straightforward as well. As soon as you figure out which buttons to push in which sequence, that's a pretty straightforward thing too. But I love that it's available to students 24/7, and it's all correct information. Sometimes kids mislearn information or they learn misinformation, and you have to go back and correct it, and that can be a challenge as well. So I hope the tutorial was helpful for you. Obviously, it ran a little bit longer than it would take if you were creating the podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and record this podcast as a podcast for you to see how I would lay this out. But I hope the tutorial was helpful for you. Okay? All right. Have a great day. Thanks.